reserving the right to object, and I'd like to give some remarks. I want to start off with a process question to all 100 senators. Obviously, this is an important issue with a lot of people. Democrats control every committee in this body, and this bill is being offered when it could be brought up in the committee under regular order because they control the agendas of, in this case, the Judiciary Committee. So why hasn't that come up? Then I would remind people in 2013 that we actually had a vote on a Grassley-Cruz amendment that got the most votes so far of any gun issues in, I think, the year 2013. So now let's get to the issue that was brought up today by the senator from Connecticut. And let me say that we've got to have real regard for the position he takes because of the tragedy that happened in his state in 2012. Nobody's going to justify that, or if they did, they would be crazy for trying to say that something bad like that happened, that it's not a crisis for everybody. So let me start off by saying, in regard to what happened in Michigan, the senseless tragedy that we saw in that state should not have happened. The shooter, as we've been told, killed 4 and injured others in a shocking act of violence. I cannot imagine what those families of victims are going through, because I guess you'd have to go through it to try to get their feeling about it. You see it expressed on television, but it doesn't make the same impact on the people that are listening that makes on the family of the victims. Difficult topics require across-the-aisle conversations, particularly when you have to have 60 votes to get anything done in this body. And I'd invite my colleagues across the aisle to have a bipartisan conversation on this topic and a lot of related topics to it. Violent crime and violence at schools are serious problems. I've supported legislative efforts to improve the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, which we call NICS. For example, I introduced the EAGLES Act, a bipartisan bill that would help reauthorize the U.S. Secret Service's National Threat Assessment Center, where they study targeted violences and proactively identify and manage threats before they result in tragedies. However, in regard to the motion before us, I have serious concerns with the bill raised by the senator from Connecticut. This bill is hostile towards lawful gun owners and lawful firearm transactions. This will not solve the problems that it seeks to solve. So-called universal background checks will not prevent crime and will turn otherwise law-abiding citizens into criminals. I've introduced legislation along with Senator Cruz and Tillis called Protecting Communities and Preserving the Second Amendment Act. Our bill will be much more effective than the underlying bill and has been supported by a majority of the Senate in the past. And I think that's the same thing that I was referring to, a vote that got a majority but not 60 votes in 2013. But the Democrat leadership has blocked that approach, which I assume that they will do again today. This legislation, S. 1775, would reauthorize and improve NICS, increase resources for prosecution of gun crime, and address mental illness in the criminal justice system, which, if it had been addressed properly in the case of the Parkland, Florida shooting, that individual that had been identified, I think somewhere between 30 and 40 times as having very serious mental issues. And if he had been identified, he would have been in the NICS system and not be able to buy that gun. And that's just one thing, mental illness being a problem. And this legislation would also strengthen criminal law by including straw purchasing and illegal firearms trafficking statutes. It does that without burdening any Second Amendment rights of Americans. In addition, this bill would require a commission to study and report to Congress the underlying causes and triggers for mass shootings. The commission and study proposal could not come at a more important time, and I urge my colleagues to support this legislation that I will suggest to the Senate on a UC request. Therefore, Mr. President, I object to the motion that you've asked UC on.
Objection is